Alright everyone, in this video I want to begin the process of getting the different clones to work together as a team by implementing a kind of turn-taking behavior so that each clone waits its turn before acting so that it acts at just the right moment. Alright, so here's going to be the idea behind the algorithm. So the first thing that happens is a ghost gets zapped or a bat gets zapped or something like that. At that point, that sends a signal. Now we have this already. It sends a signal, which is then picked up by this number. Now we're going to create a variable that says which number is currently on, which is to say, whose turn is it right now? Which number's turn? Now right now we only have one number, so the game starts with it being that number's turn. So then that number changes to the next number. And then when there's another zap, it changes to the next number. And so on. And then this continues right the way up until it's on 9. Now 9 is the interesting one. When it gets to 9 and a ghost is zapped, well now it has to change to 0, but it also does something else. So as well as changing to 0, it passes the turn over to its neighbor. Now if it doesn't have a neighbor yet, it creates a neighbor by cloning itself, and then that neighbor gets a turn, so it increments by 1. And then the turn goes back to the rightmost digit. So now if another zap occurs, it will only affect the digit on the right because that's the digit whose turn it is. So we get a 1. And then if there's another zap, then that becomes a 2. That's because it's its turn. And if that gets zapped, then that becomes a 3. And so on, all the way up until 9. Now 9 again is the interesting one. So if there's a zapped ghost when the digits, the units number is on 9, then it changes to 0, but it also gives a turn to its neighbor. Now this time it doesn't have to clone anything because its neighbor already exists. So the neighbor takes a turn, that becomes a 2, and then the turn goes back to the digits again. And this will continue happening all the way up until this is 99. Now suppose we have 99 and a ghost gets zapped. Then this changes to 0 and passes a turn to this. But now this does the same thing. It changes to 0 and passes a turn to this. But since there's nothing here, we end up cloning this, and then it gets its turn and goes up by 1, and then the turn goes back here. So that's how you're going to get this kind of infinite creation of more and more numbers just as you need them. So we start by making a variable, whose turn, with a question mark, and this is for all sprites. And then we're going to put a wait until in here, and this is going to say wait until it's your turn. But I actually want to put an or in first. I'll explain the second part of the or in a minute. So the first part is wait until it's your turn. So wait until whose turn equals my ID. So when it's your turn, suppose your ID is 100, then you have to wait until somebody makes whose turn into 100. And then that's your time to proceed with this stuff. So remember, all the clones are receiving this independently, but each of them's going to wait here until it's their turn, so they're not all acting at once. Now the other possibility is if whose turn becomes 0, and remember that 0 isn't the number of anybody's ID, because the IDs are 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, and so on. So 0 is for no one. So this is basically says when it's nobody's turn, then you can actually go ahead. And what will happen in that case is we'll say, if it's your turn, go ahead and do this stuff. But if it's not anybody's turn, then stop waiting for a turn. Just skip all this and finish up. I want to take all this actually and make a block called take turn. And then we'll just make that into that block, and then we'll put this here. So if you get past this wait, then either it's your turn or it's nobody's turn. If it's your turn, then do your stuff. But if it's nobody's turn, then it's over. So just stop waiting. And this if then just tests for which of those. Okay, so in the next video, we will hook all that up and use this new variable to get all the clones taking turns. I'll see you there. Thank you for listening. And if you find this video useful, please hit like and subscribe.